All right, so let's now do one more example about for loop and while loop. And I would like to draw you a connection to the arithmetic sequence you did in week number 2. Let's review very quickly what you did 2 weeks ago. If you open the project for week number 2, under model, you got a class called sequence over here for arithmetic sequence, right? Remember about first term and also common difference, right? I'm not going to review it, so I assume you know already. If you don't know, pause the video and review very quickly about the formula for arithmetic sequence. I'm going to rely on you on that, okay? So what I will do is, previously, remember we assumed there are only 5 terms always, right? So this is not being very nice about user using your program here. They can always assume there's only a 5-term arithmetic sequence. It would be very nice if the user can also specify how long the arithmetic sequence is, given its first term and also common difference. It would be very nice, right? So why don't we try that? It actually can be done very easily using a for loop and while loop. Again, you do not need an array. Okay, the reason that I want to cover this problem over here, so there are many problems over there. You might think you might just need an array, but you really don't need it. Okay, but let's see. Let's now close the sequence over here, right? Let's now close week number 2, and what I'm going to do is let's now we do not need to worry about console apps for the moment. Let's develop some model. All right, over here. So right click and then say new and class over here. Okay, and then what I would say is, let's say sequence as well, right? So now you can really compare the sequence in week number 4 versus the sequence in week number 2. Let me even call that sequence 1 over here, because I'm going to show you 2 different versions of the sequence. The first one I'm going to talk about is actually slightly more specific. I'll make it even more general, slightly more general for the second version, but just 2 different flavors, okay? So what I will do, okay, so now I'm doing a model class, utility class, no main method anymore, okay? What I will do is I'm going to use this, and then I will use the GUnit tests to actually test it. But for the console application, you can feel free to write one to call that and print out to the console. I'll let you do it, okay? I'll let you do the practice yourself. But for now, I'm going to do exactly what you are required to do for all your labs and also for your programming tests, which will be just the model and also GUnit test, right? Okay, for sequence number 1, I'm just going to declare a method over here. Let's say public static void, not main, sorry, beg your pardon, public static, and then it's going to be returning a string value about the string representation of the sequence. So I'm going to say get sequence over here. Okay, let me maximize it. Okay, and the sequence we're talking about right now is the arithmetic sequence. And we're going to take integer first term, integer common difference over here, and also integer the number of terms over here, right? You can see this part over here is really new about how many terms you can get. You can think about if you're calling this method in the context of some console application. I think maybe I should still do it with you, I think I should, okay, for your learning. I'll do it. Okay, you can think about this end over here can come from different possible scenario. It could be maybe some input that's read from the scanner, from the keyboard. You can pass the end over here. I'm going to show you. And also you can simply just call this from the GUnit context, in which case just give a particular value. We'll see both. All right, so what I'll do is it's now the return value, return type simply string. Let's declare that first. String result is simply empty string to begin with. Eventually, I want to return the result, right? You should be very used to such a structure for your method, right? Remember, inside the utility method, you never ever put any system.out.println line over here. This is not the place to put it. Also, you don't put any scanner input over here. Also, no, right? If you violate it, you're going to get very low marks, or if not 0 for your labs or for your programming test. So please follow the rule. All right, so now what should we do? Basically, we want to, let me code the solution first, and then I will explain that on my iPad very briefly about how things work. Okay, so I would say for integer I is 1, I less than or equal to n, I plus plus. How many iterations am I planning to run? Well, based on what we learned before, it should be exactly n iterations, right? Starting from 1, term number 1 basically, and then as long as 1 is less than or equal to n, n is relative to the n over here, which could be any number. That's why this is so general over here. And then I is going to be incremented every time. So that's why I want to use a for loop version first. I can show you a while loop version in just a moment, but let me do the for loop version first. And then I'm simply going to do, maybe I can say, over here, I can simply the integer, let's say, the term over here. You can think about the term is more like a current term I'm talking about. I'm going to go from first term, second term, all the way to the final term, right? I'm going to update by the common difference in each iteration. So term will be just ft to begin with. By the way, you should never try to really say ft is assigned to reassigned to some value, for example 23. You should never try to reassign the parameter value over here, if either ft, d, or n. You should never do it. Okay, it's not going to have any effects. All right, and then I'm just going to assign ft to the term over here. You can think about that as a current term. All right, so what I would do is I'm going to eventually want to print out the term, print out the sequence over here. So I may have just another string, like a report, like what we did before. Let's say string report. Or I can simply use the result here if I wish. Okay, how about I just use the result since it's already declared. So I don't need to redeclare that. I can simply say result is simply, okay, so that's already empty string to begin with. Okay, that's fine. Okay, just clarifying my thought. What I would do is I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say result plus equal, right? Empty string in the first iteration, it will be accumulated by the current term. Okay. But before that, I want to say this, okay? Now this is what I want to say. I want to say result plus equal. Let's say we have this starting delimiter for the sequence, right? Opening angle brackets, okay? And then we want to say at the end, we're also going to end the sequence by some closing angle brackets over here. You can see this line and also this line, they are not part of the body for the loop, meaning that we only print this once in the very beginning. Also, we only print this once in the very end. All right. And then we are simply just going to do this. I'm going to say result plus equal, let's say the term over here. So that'll be the string. And then I want to now say I want to separate them by a comma. How can I say that? Let me just put it in a naive way. I can say result plus equal some comma and then followed by some space. Right? That's what I can say over here. However, this may not be right. Okay, because we want to make sure after the very last turn, you don't really have a comma space. You don't want to. And we already talked about how you can do this. You can do a conditional. But let me do that. I can do it right away. I can say if it's not the last term. If I is actually strictly less than n. Okay, you can see I will be here as long as I is less than or equal to. So when I is exactly equal to n, so that means it's the last term. In which case we don't put any comma after that. So when I is strictly less than n, okay, let me just put some comments over here for you. I less than n, so this means not the last term in the sequence. All right. And then what I will do is I'm going to say result plus equal comma. So this should be conditional rather than unconditional, right? You can definitely try to actually print this out without the if. You will see that there will be a comma space after every term, which is not what we want. We want to printing the sequence to the string. All right, so I think that would be it about the sequence over here. Let's say we also want to, for fun, we want to calculate the average for the sequence. So why don't we say over here, I can say integer, the sum of the sequence. Initially, simply just 0 over here. And then let's say this. So after we have already accumulated the first term, the current term to the result, we want to update the term to be the next one. So I can say term plus equal over here, plus equal d, right? That's how I get to the next term. You can think about this is equivalent to term is assigned to term plus d, right? Remember, right? And then I'm just going to accumulate the sum as well. So sum plus equal the term, right? No, I should really do this earlier. I should do this first. So basically, the current term, for example, for the very first iteration, the term will be the first term added to the sum, accumulated. For the second iteration, term will be updated to the second term in the sequence by adding the common difference, and etc. I'll try to trace the code together with you a little bit later. Okay, I believe that's about how to calculate the sum, and also we can say result plus equal over here. Okay, has average. Okay, how do we calculate the average, right? We want to calculate the average with precision. We have seen a trick like this earlier in this week, right, in the tutorial video. We want to make sure we say the sum divided by n, right? That's what we want to do. However, the problem is at the moment you can see the type for the sum is actually integer, and the type for n is actually also integer, right? You can see n is also integer over here. If the integer divided by integer is only going to give you the quotient for the division, that's not what we want. So there are different ways you can tackle this. You can change the type over here from integer to double. That's going to solve it, because at least one of the operands for the division will become non-integer. So that'll be okay. You cannot change the type for integer over here, but that's because that's usually already given to you. So that's not an option. I'm going to try another way. I can simply cast one of them to be double, right? I can say over here, double. Okay, so also as we learned in the elementary programming lecture, this cast has higher precedence than the division operator over here, which means we're going to do the cast first before we do the division. So you may want to review your lecture notes if you're not sure. All right, I believe that will be about it. And let's now test it, right? I would just want to test maybe, I would say you may just want to test very briefly with the console application, but eventually you want to write your test cases in the GUnit test as well. Let's do console application. I'll write it together with you. I think I just want you to make sure you're fine. Right click on the console application, and then we're going to say new class over here. Why don't we say, let's say sequence app 1, all right? And then with the main method, all right? And then let's program the scanner the console application very quickly. Scanner, and then control space, okay, and then input new scanner. And then we're gonna say input dot close over here. Okay, let's now read the input from the user. System out of print line over here. Let's say enter the first term of the arithmetic sequence. You can see now we don't really fix the size. It's up to the user about how long the sequence should be. All right, and now enter over here, and then we can say integer first term will be input dot next int. Okay, and then sys out over here. Enter the common difference of the sequence. Integer d will be input dot next int. All right. Finally, what's the size? Given the first term, given the common difference, you want to know exactly how long the sequence is, right? Any length should be able to able to derive the sequence from that accordingly. So I'm gonna say sys out over here. Let's say enter the size of the sequence, or the length of the sequence. Integer n will be input dot next int. I deliberately actually chose the local variables over here, ft, d, and also n, just to be the same as ft, d, and also n, the input parameters over here, but they don't have to be, right? It's completely up to you, but I'll just make it the same. All right, so now let's try to call the utility method over here. I can say utilities, oops, sorry. Let me just delete it. Utilities. Utilities, you want to be careful over here. So it will be the utilities from the model package, right? Oh, I called it sequence 1. Sorry, I just got confused with your lab. Beg your pardon. It should be sequence 1. Sequence 1 dot get sequence over here. Maybe I should really rename this to be utility. Let me do that in a moment. Okay, and then so these are all good, right? You can see ft corresponding to ft over here, d corresponding to d. But again, this do not have to be called ft. I can call it anything I like. All right. So sequence 1 that gets sequence over here, and then I should really catch the result. String result is assigned to the return value, and then sys out. Okay, and then the result over here. All right, no surprise over here. The only thing is I'm gonna rename this class in just a moment, so I can put all the utility methods inside a particular class. Okay, I'll do that in a moment. Okay, let's try to run this console application. Let's say 5, and then common difference can be any number, integer. It can be even negative. I'll just write 2. Let's say size 15. All right, you can see working pretty well. You can see 5, 7, 9, all the way to, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Actually, did I run? Okay, let me do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got 15 turns exactly, right? You can see now after the very last turn over here, we didn't have the comma. Let me demonstrate to you how you could have done it wrongly. As the average 19.0. Yeah, you can verify the math. I'm pretty sure that's right. And this is really with the precision 0.0. Okay. All right. So let's you know what? I can try another one over here. Let's say this. Let's say 5 and then 3 and then let's say 7 turns over here. I can see that's really with the precision over here, 40.0. Okay, divided by 7. Okay. There might be some cases where this may not be actually exactly 0.0, I think. But anyway, I'll let you test it. Okay, I believe it's working. But if you didn't do the cast to double, as I just illustrated to you, you wouldn't get the precision, the fractional part. Okay, that's the point. All right, so let me now go back to the sequence over there. Okay, I simply just want to rename this class over here to be utilities. Okay, right click on the class, refactor, and then rename. And then utilities. Okay, that'll be just much easier. So put all the methods over here. Let's also rename this method over here. Rather than get sequence, let's say get sequence 1. Okay, right click on the name and say refactor and say rename. Let's get sequence 1 over here. Okay, so now we are all good. So now you can see in this case, we are calling get sequence 1. All right. Let's now see very quickly how can we create a version that uses while loop. Okay, let's see very quickly. Okay, so now we can see get sequence 1 over here. Let's now, you know what? I think it'll be even better if I say get sequence 1A. Okay, I change my mind all the time, sorry. 1A because 1A will be version number 1 using for loop. Why don't we try 1B, which will be version number 1 using while loop. Okay, let's see that. I would suggest, let me just demonstrate one more thing to you. What if I did this unconditionally? Temporarily, I'm going to put this into comments. Okay, what if I simply say result plus equal comma? What's going to happen, right? It's important. If I go back here, if I simply run it, let's say if I say maybe start with 23 and then maybe 7 and then maybe 5 turns, maybe I don't know, 7 turns maybe. Okay, that's 44.0 over here. You can double check the math. I believe that's correct. But now you can see the problem. There is a comma space after every turn over here unconditionally, including the last turn. However, for pretty printing purpose, we don't want any comma space after the last turn. So which means when the current value for the loop counter is actually n, we don't want to put a comma space at the end, right? That's why it'll be very important for you to appreciate what we are putting over here, right? Over here. Okay, I'll put it back. All right. So now let's go on to create 1B. Okay, 1B will be exactly the same functionality, but now we would like to do what we would like to do is we want to create a while loop version. Okay, let's do that. Paste 1B over here. Now, how can we convert this into a while loop? You may just want to pause the video and try to do it yourself. If you understood what I illustrated in the previous video, you should be able to do it, okay? Assuming that you have tried, okay, easy. Change from for to while. And then cut this part, put it outside. Remember to put semicolon after this, and then remove the first semicolon inside the while, and also cut this part about I++ and put it to the end. Okay, so let me just get rid of this, like that. That's it. That's the while loop version, right? You can see how easy it is. Okay, so now I got version 1A and 1B. Okay, so now rather than just using the console application to test manually again, let me write some GUnit test. Why don't we do that? So let me simply go double click. Let me just write some GUnit test. It's really important for you to know how to write GUnit test. Right click and then say new, and then we'll do GUnit test case over here, and then new GUnit test 4. So test utilities. Make sure you add GUnit 4 to the path, and then say, yep, that's good. Okay, let's now try to test one each. Okay, let's say test get sequence 1A. All right, it's called get sequence 1A. Why don't we just say just one test case? I think that'll be enough. What I will do is I'm gonna say, how do I write it, right? Remember, our test case always come with the 2 lines, always. So I'm gonna say string, the result is equal to utilities dot get sequence 1A, right? Why don't I say I start with maybe 6, and then let's say the common difference is maybe I don't know, maybe 11. And then, how many turns do we have? Let's say 5 turns. 5 will be quite easy, right? Why don't we say 4 turns? Let's see what's going to happen. So now, in order to figure out the value, I'll let you figure it out exactly what it should be. But before that, let me just do this. I'm going to say assert equals over here, right? And then what's being expected? It's going to be some string. I'm going to put it over here. And also, what's going to be the value for the return value? Well, exactly stored over here, right? So you're going to put a result over here, right? Okay, so now what should I put over here? First of all, let's put a sequence here. Start with 6, and then 17, and also 28, and also 39. So these are the 4 terms, right? And then you're going to do the sum and divide it by 4. Has average. Okay, let's see what the average should be. All right, it should be 22.5, right? You can verify that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. All right, so now let's try to run the GUnit test and see what happened. I will simply right-click on this and then say run as GUnit test. All right, I got a green bar. All right, that's very good. Okay, let's now also copy and paste this test case, right? And then do it again. When you actually try to create your own GUnit test, I would say you can always copy and paste what's given to you and try to modify it. I think that'll be a very smart way to do it. Let's say we want to test sequence 1B. And then you're going to call 1B over here. And then given the same input over here, you should really get the same expected output, right? Not surprising. And if I simply hit this again, it's going to run the test utilities. Now we got 2 test cases, both pass, right? And by the way, let's say, for example, if for whatever reason you make some mistake, let me show you again how you can how you're supposed to do. So this week we didn't emphasize too much about debugger. I assume in your lecture you will actually see exactly how to run the how to execute a for loop and while loop. I'll try to give you more insight about using debugger to debug the for loop and while loop. I'll do that next week. Okay. Let's say, for example, for whatever reason you simply say rather than d, you actually 2 times d, for example, right? That's wrong for sure. The consequence of that will be you simply run the GUnit test again. It's going to give you something that's wrong, right? Basically, go to the wrong test case. Under failure trace, you can see there's some expected value versus actual value in case it's a string. Double click. There will be a panel very usefully brought up. You can see that's exactly showing you that's being expected That's really actual. You can see exactly what the discrepancy, what the difference is, right? I just want to remind you. And then you can set a breakpoint and debug a unit test, right? We talked about it many times already. But as I promised, I'll do that with you about debugging in for loop, while loop next week, not this week. All right, so let's now go back to our test over here. Let me change back, right? I don't want to have anything wrong in my code over here. That's D over here, right? Okay, so far, recap very quickly. So far we got this utility class over here. We got getSequence1a, and also we got getSequence1b. So we got two versions over here. One is about for loop over here, and the other one is about while loop. All right, and let me talk about it very quickly on the iPad, and I'll give you quickly a second version. Let me switch to my iPad. All right, so let's now talk about this. Let me just go to the for loop version. For the while loop, it will be the same reasoning. Okay, let's just go over all the bits and pieces over here just to recap, and then I'll give you the second version. Let's now identify where the loop is. So this is the for loop over here. You can see this part over here is the for loop over here. Just identify that, right? Okay, that's a for loop. And then you can see we got actually three variables that's declared outside the scope for the for loop. We got the turn over here. Let me just make it thicker. We got a turn over here. We got the result, and also we got the sum. Okay, let's see where the turn is used. Turn is basically updated inside the loop over here. All right, you want to make sure. However, you might be wondering, what if I actually declare the turn inside the loop over here? For example, if I say integer turn over here, the reason that it wouldn't work is because if you actually put it inside over here, it's gonna work. It's not gonna work because every time for every iteration, you're going to execute this as a first line by redeclaring a local variable turn by initializing that to be 0. So that's not the way to go. Okay, I'll try to maybe bring up maybe another maybe next week or maybe later to show you exactly how things might be how things might go wrong. But this week I don't have that much time. But I would say you can definitely try. You're definitely right to really question about where to put the variables. I would say if you got any different thoughts about how programs should work, I highly encourage you to really try it out on the tutorial example. That's really what you should do to be curious. All right. For now, I'm just gonna undo it. Okay, and then the turn is actually used over here. That's good. And also for the sum, it's also going to be used, going to be accumulated. You can see eventually, what we will do is we're gonna say over here result. We simply say here result. Right? You can see result is actually accumulated for every iteration and also outside the loop over here. Right? It's really important to see all these variables are used to be accumulated inside the loops over here, and also outside the loop they're simply just maybe accumulated, or they're simply just used to be returned, right? So in the context of utility methods, we don't have any system out of print line. Remember, we don't. And this, of course, is just another conditional accumulation, right? We explained the conditional accumulation already. All right. Let's see what else might be worth mentioning. And also, you can try to see here. You can see the opening angle brackets and also the closing angle brackets. They are actually outside the loop. If you put it inside the loop, for example, hypothetically, if you put this inside the loop, you're gonna print out this for as many times as the length of the sequence, right? And also similarly, if you put this inside, it's also not gonna work. You can try that for me, and then to see if that will actually work. Actually, I'll be very surprised if that works. Okay, and then let's see if there's anything else to really mention to you. Okay, very quickly about here, you can see this is the one test case that we did previously. I just want to show you here. You can see only one instance for the angle brackets, which is here. Only one instance over here for the closing angle brackets, which is over here. And then you also got, let me use a different color, comma, space, comma, space, comma, space, only for the very first n-1 turn. You can think about n-1 turns should really be followed by comma space, right? That's why you only say I is strictly less than n. When I is equal to n, so that means it is the nth turn. That's why we just want to only say the first n-1 terms should be followed by comma space, right? Hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, I believe that's about it. Okay, I think just study this example here. I think just another example of using loops, either for loop or while loop. And just remember, now we are in the context of utility methods, so we don't have any system out of print line statement or any scanner. It's simply not relevant in this case over here. All right, and now I'm going to introduce to you one more small version variation, and then we are done for the week.